Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, before we get to the all-important judiciary hearing today, I'd like to ask you about Joe Biden repeatedly snubbing Bibi Netanyahu in Israel. You think it may be because Bibi, I don't know, against the Iran deal, or why is Biden pushing to give tens of billions of dollars to the Iranians to remove sanctions, but he won't even meet with the head of the Israeli government? What do you think?
Well, it is utterly shameful, Eric, and this administration, the Biden administration, has been the most profoundly anti-Israel administration our country's ever had. At every level, they have systematically undermined the state of Israel. They have systematically worked to weaken the government of Israel. Joe Biden and his administration despises Prime Minister Netanyahu. I believe Prime Minister Netanyahu is an historic figure. He is, and I have told him this before, I think he has a Churchillian sense of gravity as to the threats facing Israel and the threats facing America. And the Biden White House has made clear he is not welcome in the White House. And this is on the heels of 2.5 years of systematically implementing policies to undermine Israel, most recently announcing a policy of the Biden administration embracing BDS, embracing boycott, divestiture, and sanctions of the West Bank and Israel, where the Biden administration is now blocking scientific funds for cancer research in Israel because they've handed their agenda over to the radical anti-Semitic left who hates Israel. And to see the president of the United States wrapping his arms around the extreme BDS movement is disgraceful. So, of course, he doesn't want Israel's prime minister in the White House. That's incredibly harmful to Israel, and it's incredibly harmful to America.
Senator, is it some sort of, no, this is a big one, is it some sort of anti-Semitic vein that runs through the administration?
Well, there is a hard left in the Democrat Party that is profoundly anti-Semitic. You've got the squad in the House of Representatives that repeatedly makes anti-Semitic attacks, repeats anti-Semitic tropes. You know, when that happened initially, you may remember Nancy Pelosi, as Speaker, tried to get the House to pass a resolution condemning anti-Semitism. And she tried, and the Democratic caucus revolted on her. She discovered that they didn't have the votes to condemn anti-Semitism. And so she ended up watering the resolution down to a generic resolution condemning of all kinds against anybody. And when that happened, that was incredibly disappointing. I decided I wanted to see if the Senate could do better. And so I went to Tim Kaine, Democrat from Virginia, and I said, Tim, can we come together and do what the House couldn't? And so I drafted it. We came together on it. It was the Cruz-Kaine resolution. It unequivocally condemned anti-Semitism. It unequivocally condemned BDS as a form of anti-Semitism, and it directly condemned the anti-Semitic comments of the squad members. We took it to the Senate floor, and we passed it in the Senate floor 100-0. What's happened under Biden is they've given in to the anti-Semitic fervor of the squad. And it's tied into what you said a minute ago, which is the number one foreign policy objective of Joe Biden is to enter into a new Iran nuclear deal. It's why they're funneling billions of dollars to an Ayatollah who routinely chants death to Israel and death to America. They are extreme, and this White House embraces that anti-Semitic hatred from Iran.
Awful. Terrible. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Senator, let's get to that hearing we were talking about earlier. There were some really outrageous moments, and I'd like to first point out, at one point, Christopher Wray was being questioned. Again, Jim Jordan was just attacking. He was awesome. And he asked, why would you, FBI, put agents into churches? Listen.
Yeah. Let me just read from page 4. Provide new opportunities to mitigate extremist threat through outreach to traditional Catholic parishes and the development of sources with the placement and access to report on places of worship. That's pretty fancy language for they're trying to put informants in the parish, in the church. That's what this memorandum said, Director, from one of your field offices. And you won't let us talk to the people who did it.
Yeah, and Senator, he had literally no response. I mean, he obfuscated. He talked about the letter, the note from Merrick Garland. What are your thoughts on this?
Look, I think we are witnessing the most partisan and politicized Department of Justice this nation's ever seen. I think we're witnessing the most partisan and politicized FBI this nation has ever seen. As you know, the last book I wrote is called Justice Corrupted: How the Left Has Weaponized Our Legal System. And the book Justice Corrupted walks through chapter and verse precisely how DOJ and the FBI and the IRS and the CIA, the Democrats have turned them into weapons to attack their enemies. And sadly, Chris Wray has been unwilling to take on the hardcore partisans who burrowed into senior career positions at the FBI. They are stonewalling to protect Joe Biden. They are stonewalling to stop investigation into the mounting evidence of Joe Biden's corruption, into the allegations that Joe Biden received a $5 million bribe from a foreign national. The FBI refuses to hand over the documents they have. They refuse to answer questions about it. And shamefully, we now have two IRS whistleblowers who have come forward alleging the Attorney General of the United States lied under oath to Congress, to me, actually, in the Senate Judiciary Committee, when he insisted there was no interference in the Hunter Biden investigation. And the whistleblowers also allege that the Attorney General essentially committed obstruction of justice. I have called repeatedly on my podcast, Verdict with Ted Cruz, actually on today's episode of the podcast, I have called for the Department of Justice to appoint a special counsel to investigate the Attorney General and whether the Attorney General has committed multiple felonies, including lying under oath and obstruction of justice.
Great. Fantastic. Let us know how that proceeds. Control Room 00D, undercover FBI agents, and Ray calls them confidential human sources surrounding January 6th, Senator. This is very disturbing. Listen.
Don't distract here because we're focusing on those who were there in an undercover capacity on January 6th. How many were there?
Again, I'm not sure that I can give you that number as I sit here. I'm not sure there were undercover agents on scene.
Well, what he went on to say is they call them confidential human sources. Senator, my question is, what is that? I get what that is, but why is the FBI putting confidential human sources in events? I mean, they make a regular practice of this?
Listen, the FBI is stonewalling here, and they're refusing to answer straightforward questions. I've asked that exact same question to the FBI before. I've asked them how many undercover agents or informants did they have in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. I've asked them, did their agents incite violence? I asked them, did their agents commit acts of violence? They refuse to answer across the board. They simply say, I can't answer that, I can't answer that. And the problem is the FBI now has a culture of a lack of accountability. They believe they don't answer to anybody, that they don't have to answer Congress's questions. They don't have to answer the American people's questions. And I got to say, I've known Chris Wray a long time. I don't think Chris Wray is a leftist. He's not a Democrat. Chris is a company man. He believes he's defending the FBI. And I'll tell you, I have had screaming disagreements with him where I've pointed out, you are not defending the FBI when you protect rabid partisans in the senior career ranks who are turning the FBI into the enforcement arm of the DNC. And in fact, you are destroying the integrity and the credibility of the FBI. And I got to tell you, Eric, I hear from FBI agents and career prosecutors at the Department of Justice over and over and over again who are horrified to see the integrity of those great institutions so badly undermined.
Senator, very quickly, I want to get on to a couple of topics because I was shocked at the way the tables have turned. The FBI, a law enforcement agency, the Democrats were softballing them, and the Republicans had to be the tough adults in the room. When did it flip? Very quickly, if you don't mind.
Well, look, there's an arrogance. We saw it really grow under Barack Obama. And under Obama, we saw the IRS weaponized to target conservatives, to go after the political enemies of Obama. We saw the FBI weaponized. We saw DOJ weaponized. Then when Trump became president, those partisans burrowed into senior career positions in all of those agencies. And for 4 years, they waged war on Donald Trump. They hate Donald Trump. They did not want him to be president, and they waged war on him. And Chris Wray was unwilling to rein in the partisans. Now, with Joe Biden, they're not hiding anymore. They're no longer in the dark, in the shadows. They're out in the open. They are brazen, and they will not
Senator,
answer a straight question.
You brought up the topic I wanted to bring up next. And listen, folks, I got to ask, Trump or DeSantis, do you have an opinion? Is there an endorsement coming from Ted Cruz? I know you have a big 2024 election coming up. You know, Trump's endorsement is worth can we hear your thoughts on that?
So I am staying out of that race. I am good friends with President Trump. I'm good friends with Ron DeSantis. I think the election is basically a two-man race between the two of them. Whoever wins, I will support enthusiastically in the general election. But I'm staying out of that and letting the voters decide. All
right. Very quickly, before we go, I want to play a little game with you because if you don't know this, Senator Cruz has the greatest sense of humor in the world. He may not come off like that sometimes, but he's got a great sense of humor. I'm going to read the quote and give you options who said this. And the quote is, AI is kind of a fancy thing. It means artificial intelligence. Now, is it A, a third grader in science class? Is it B, Elon Musk's first words uttered as a baby? Or is it C, our sitting vice president?
Well, Eric, I got to say what you're saying is deeply offensive to third graders to suggest they could sound remotely like Kamala Harris. Listen, Kamala has a level of philosophy that really kind of defies language, defies understanding. You know, that fancy thing AI.
I'll give you a couple of seconds real quick because I know I got to let you go. You have a heart out. Give us a couple of seconds of Kamala, guys. We got to hear this. Go.
AI is kind of a fancy thing. It's, first of all, it's two letters. It means artificial intelligence. But ultimately what it is it's about machine learning.
Senator, in case you didn't know, AI, it's two letters. Appreciate
two
your
letters.
time.
Do not ask her to spell FBI.
That's a very good point. Senator Ted Cruz, really good having you. I appreciate your time.